How is your garden growing lately? Maybe you have a backyard garden space like I do, or it could be a few containers on your patio, or even some herbs or microgreens growing on a kitchen countertop. Perhaps you've wanted to get into gardening more this year, or maybe it's something you're still dreaming about cultivating. You just haven't had the time or the know how. Well, you're in the right place because I've been gardening for less than 10 years and I've made a lot of different mistakes, but I've also learned a whole lot. I want to take you on my continued garden journey and share all the lessons I've been learning with you, the mistakes, the successes, and everything in between. Welcome to Michelle's Garden Grows and welcome to my potting bench. Here we're all about growing plants and learning all about gardening, but we're also about creating or cultivating a beautiful garden space as well as a beautiful and peaceful life while connecting with nature and community. So today I want to share a little bit about how I got started gardening and the journey that brought me here. Maybe like me, you didn't grow up with a green thumb, but somehow the love of gardening found you, or you found the love of gardening. My garden journey really began way before I ever put a seed in the ground. I grew up in the 1980s in rural area of West Virginia, and while my dad really wasn't a gardener per se, he did have a couple of different gardens that I remember, and they were the type of gardens that you've probably seen before. They were long row gardens, and there were rows and rows of plants, and the garden was in a big field with no trees around it, and he had Sevin dust on all of the plants most of the time. And most of the organic gardeners today know that Sevin dust is not an organic gardener's friend, nor a friend to the beneficial insects. So anyway, needless to say, this style of gardening, even when I was a kid, did not appeal to me at all. However, I used to go visit my aunt and uncle with my father, and while the adults would stay inside and visit and talk, I would go out in their backyard where they had this beautiful backyard garden space, and I would go and explore through the garden and pretend and play by myself. And I really think, looking back, that's where the seed was planted in my heart that gardening was something I enjoyed. I liked being around that garden. As life went on, I always thought about starting a garden for myself. However, I am a registered nurse and I worked many years of long hours at the hospital, and then got married, had children, cared for my children, cared for my elderly father, and helped my husband plant a congregation from the ground up. And I did years of admin and volunteer work there. And I just never found the space or time to start gardening. But I believe those years of pouring into others, caregiving for others, really laid the groundwork for how I garden today. Fast forward to the age of 48, I finally found a margin in my life to start exploring if I could grow a garden. And I was inspired from or by Nicole Johnsey Burke of Gardenary. And I had her book, Kitchen Garden Revival. And I told my husband, if you can build me a beautiful space to go out to with a trellis and garden beds and all of the beautiful items that I saw in her book, I think I could start gardening. My husband went right to work building me this beautiful kitchen garden, and I was so thankful and so excited. And we put in wooden garden beds and cattle fence trellises. Unfortunately, we did have to end up replacing the wooden garden beds after 5 years and replacing them with metal birdies beds through Epic Gardening. And let me know in the comments if you want me to share a video on how we transitioned from wooden garden beds to the metal garden beds. And now that I have the metal garden beds, I will never go back, I don't believe, to the wooden ones. I really love the metal beds. And just this year in 2025, I started my michellesgardengrows.com website, where I have a hub of all that I'm learning. It's a place where you can find resources about gardening. You can find plant profiles. I started hosting the Garden Book Club, and you can find that information there as well. Someone asked me if I had any regrets regarding starting gardening so late in life. I would say my only regret is that I started gardening when my children were a good bit older. They were in their last years of high school, starting college, and they weren't really interested in learning gardening with me. However, I'm so thankful that I started gardening when I did. And now that my children are, my son's almost graduating college now, and he's really interested in what I have developed in the garden I've grown and the website that I've grown. So I think they'll come around and they'll remember when they were in high school and I started gardening. I'm so excited that I did start gardening when I did, and I love to encourage others to get started gardening where they are. And so that's what this channel is about. I hope we can be new garden friends, and let me know in the comments if any of my story about how I came to the joy and love of gardening resonates with you. Is anything in your story similar to mine? Have you been gardening all your life, or did you just start in the past few years? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can see all the newest videos and we can become garden friends. So hit the subscribe button and I'll see you next time.